Hello everyone, so this time I would like to share a video on how to visualize this type of puffy pocket when it is attached to a regular garment like this. I got this as a request in the comments and the person mentioned that maybe it was a bit difficult to get the pocket to puff up, so I will share some of the tricks that have been helpful for me when I want to visualize this type of detail. In this video I will use a base from Close Connect platform from their official account. If you scroll down you will find it here. This is menswear block and I will use it exactly as it is here, so you can download it and follow along. It's totally for free. Okay, so let's start. First I would like to show you a little demonstration of what happens when the pocket puffs up, and usually this kind of puffiness you can achieve by using pressure, but also you can play around with additional thickness collisions. So by default usually it's 2.5. I like to put it on 1 when I try to see the more accurate result that will be end result. But if you put it on 3 or 4, you can achieve some sort of puffiness. But then you have to be mindful about the distance between the base where the pocket is attached to and your pocket, because your pocket will try to create space also between itself and the base. But of course you can try it out and see if that works for you as well. Depends on the expectation of what kind of puffiness you want to achieve. But in this video I will show you how to use the pressure. So here you can see I have the pocket and the base for now is frozen, and I have the 2 layers of the pocket which is needed to use the pressure function, and then I will add the pressure, but I want to show you the setup of the layers so the pressure works correctly. So basically when you want to use pressure you have to make sure that the right side of the fabric for both layers are facing towards you. So it shouldn't be something like this, then the pressure might not work as expected. So make sure this is the setup, and if you want to see the right side and the wrong side of the fabric, you need to change your fabric view from thick textured surface, which probably is the one you use always, to textured surface. Okay, and then let's add the pressure. So for the top layer you have to put a positive number, so in this case I will put 10, and the bottom layer should be the same number, just negative, -10. And then as you simulate, both layers will kind of push away from each other and create the puffiness. And here I have deactivated this sewing where the pocket should be attached to the base, just to show you how the size of the pocket is changing because of this puffiness. And about this one you have to be mindful, because for example if I activate the sewing, you can see the puffiness significantly reduces. And that is because you need to give the opportunity for the pocket to create the space. And you can give that opportunity by either increasing the size of the pattern or adjusting physical properties of the fabric so that the pocket pattern pieces can stretch and they can create the puffiness that you want. If you don't do any of these, depending on your fabric, you can get some sort of puffiness, of course, but it's not going to be maybe as nice and with many fine wrinkles as you would like. And also another problem is, of course, it can work very well if your base is frozen, but once you unfreeze the base, the puffiness of your pocket will definitely affect the base as well, as you can see here. Of course, when you have the avatar, it will help the base pattern to fight the puffiness of the pocket. However, you can see these lines here are quite distorted, so it's not going to be a good look. So you need some help here to keep the base nice and clean and to have the nice puffiness. And I will also say that the pressure value should be quite low, and you will see that once we start doing all these adjustments to the actual pocket here. So here I just wanted to kind of explain the basic idea behind what I will show. So I will delete that. So here I have the block. I haven't touched it yet, so I will do all the fine-tuning that is needed, and you can follow along or you can skip it, up to you. Because sometimes it's interesting when you open someone else's file, you can find different type of ways how they are set up, and sometimes the cleanup can get interesting. Okay, but here there's nothing special really. So first I will delete these internal lines because I don't really need them. And then here I can see there are top stitch. So I want these 2 top stitch lines, and I can see here that these points are empty. That means on this line I can't use like free sewing or free top stitch, because the free sewing and top stitch will finish by this point, because it's not segment point. There are 2 segment points overlapping. So I usually select both of them, right click and then join overlapping points. And then that will make these points, these filled points. So that means that the free sewing and free top stitch will go over these with no problem. And then I also want to trace these with trace tool. And also this line I would like to have. And same I will do here. And here as well I can see these points, but these empty points, but because sewing is already done, it doesn't really bother me that much, so I will leave them here. And I will sew this line where the top stitch goes to the base with free sewing. And this one I will use segment sewing, but sometimes with free sewing, when you have two lines very close to each other, it's the free sewing is kind of jumping from line to line, so it's a bit difficult to do the sewing. So oftentimes the segment sewing is a quicker approach. Okay, now I will add these top stitch lines here for the flap, and as you can see here, they have these base lines. I don't know why, but they're kind of like this. They're not connecting at one point, and here as well. So if you will try to trace, I mean, we can see what happens. If you trace them, some weirdness is happening. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Either you can try to clean it up with baseline, editing the baseline. So unlock the baseline and then holding down D, you can change the position of this point to match it. Also here, holding down D. And then you can match the positions of these points, and then I assume that as you match those points, it will be possible to trace them. Boop. No, it still didn't work. There's still some issue here. So usually if like a quick fix doesn't work, then I just offset as internal line, because sometimes those errors are so random you can't even fix them, and then you spend a lot of time and nothing happens anyway, so it's better to just offset. And here I will create two offsets with individual distance, and first one was 1.5. I already tried before. Another one was 5.5. And here this is an interesting case that also happens quite a lot when you try to offset as internal line from like this type of curved line. So some segment points, they create a lot of segment points that you don't need, but they don't create the segment points that you need. And then once you change to curve point view, you can see that you have these points here, but those are curve points. But actually you need them to be segment points. So you can select them one by one, unfortunately, and then convert to segment point, convert to segment point. And this is interesting case because it also creates curve points along this line, which I don't really need, so I delete them, and then I can get these straight lines here. And then in this side, you will see once I do that, for one line there are some curve points, for other there aren't, so it's often quite random, but it's just an easy fix that you can do. And then these segment points I will convert to curve point. Okay, so the cleanup is done. And now I will add the top layer for both, for the flap. So layer clone over, I should put it on top, and then this one as well, layer clone over. So I put it on top just so it's easier for me to understand which is top and which is bottom layer. Sometimes I put it on bottom and then I make mistakes. Okay, and now I will move the button so it doesn't create some collision problems. I will place it on the top layer, as well as the buttonhole I will place on the top layer. Okay, and we can simulate. And the first prep is done. And now I did add sewing. Sewing is added. And okay, so now we can start working on puffing up the pocket. And for that I will reduce particle distance for these parts, so that I can see more or less the final result. And for that I reduce particle distance to 5, and additional thickness collision I put on 1. I like to put it on 0.52, but lately I feel like 1 looks a little bit better. If it's 0.5, often it kind of looks very flat, so I like that little space between the layers. And simulate, and I will switch off the internal end view. Okay, so let's start puffing up the pocket. I will start first with the pocket itself, and then we can go to the flap. So first I will start by just adding the pressure. So for the top layer I will add pressure of 5, and for the bottom -5. And we can start seeing what happens step by step. It does puff up like this, but you can see it starts to affect the base a little bit, but I would say it's not so bad. If you hide these two, you can see it really goes inside. I don't think you can get completely flat base where the pocket is attached to, because the pressure will always try to push those layers apart. Therefore, the base pattern piece will also be pushed towards the avatar. But there are ways how you can make it less impactful for your base pattern. So first, what you can try to do is add some bond for the bottom layer, so this layer. And here first you can start by adjusting the stretch values. So if you don't want to adjust so much the stiffness of the fabric, like the bend of the fabric, then you can start by putting the stretch values on high, so it will not allow this to stretch so much, and it will make it a little bit firmer. Not such big of a difference. Then you can also add some stiffness here to this base part, and here I traced this upper line, and I will, after all, join these points. Because if you want to add bond to a certain internal shape, you have to make sure that this shape is closed shape, so all those corner points are filled points, not empty ones. And then bond, and I will do the same. And one thing I wanted to mention, you also have to think about what will be the purpose of your 3D visualization. If you want to do animations, then you have to be kind of careful with using bond, because if it is too strong in animation, the pocket might float around very unrealistically. So you can be you have to be a little bit mindful of that. Okay, so here I think it's not bending so much, but still you have this bend. So you can go further and try to see if increasing stiffness would help more. Or if it's not really bothering you, you can just leave it as is. But basically these are the steps you can take and play around with to achieve the result that you want. Okay. So now, as you can see, with pressure I can get only this type of puffiness, and I haven't done any other adjustment, but as I mentioned before, you need to give the opportunity to your pocket to create space. And so what I like to do is I like to add shrinkage, and it can be subtle, for example 102 or 103. Even if you have prints or some special textures, I think it's not going to be that visible. I mean, you can't with your eye detect such small difference in percentage, I think. And therefore I usually use the shrinkage, but you can also edit the size of your pattern. But in that case, I recommend removing the linked editing here, because this part you still should keep the same size and only increase the size of the top layer, because basically you want the top layer to puff up, you don't want this bottom layer to puff up that much. So here I will just use the shrinkage. But if you want to change the pattern size, you can click on it, double click in the middle point, and when you have these orange points, you can drag and right click, and then you can symmetrically change the size by percentage, and then you can put in the percentage that you want. Okay, but I will keep the shrinkage. Okay, and once you add the shrinkage, you can see not only the pocket puffs up more, you also get this nice wrinkle, which also gives a good impression that you have the puffy pocket. And as you are increasing the shrinkage, you can actually decrease the pressure, because maybe the puffiness is too exaggerated, maybe you want a more subtle look. So even putting it on 3 and -3 can give you like a nice natural look. And the lower the pressure, the less the pocket will kind of distort your base pattern. As you can see, it's not so going inwards as before. Okay, I think this result for me is fine. So shrinkage, I did 104, pressure is 3, here pressure is -3, and then I added bond with some higher stretch value so it doesn't stretch so much. Okay, so let's edit the flap now. So here, as I did layer clone over, it also took the bond, and on the top layer I wouldn't use the bond because I want it to be kind of more elastic and create the puffy shape, so I will remove it. And also here I will do the same, 104 shrinkage, and then I will do pressure 3 and pressure -3, and here I will check the bond and adjust these properties here to 60. Okay, so I would say that the flap is not really puffing up so much, and the interesting thing is that it has a button, so also this part where the button is will not puff up so much, but I still think it's a quite natural and nice look, and there are some ways we can improve it as well. So one thing, if you are missing some wrinkle and you want a little bit more volume but you don't want to increase the size of the pattern even further, you can select those pattern pieces and add skive, which is here. So skive reduces the stiffness of the fabric, and then if you put the percentage of 20, for example, the fabric will become finer. You can also see in the simulation as you move it, it's kind of more delicate, I think, than the base. And then it will create more wrinkle. And another thing that's kind of my personal preference, so when I have this type of puffy detail, I don't like to use the normal map for seams because generally I don't like it. So I would just delete it. And another thing, you can see here I have these internal lines. I don't think this look is that bad, but I like to switch on the fold rendering because that creates the sharper fold and the look is a little bit cleaner. But that, I think, really depends on preference. Okay. And then once we have those pockets like this, you can see there should be some top stitch, and top stitch can get not so nice when you add it to this type of to the internal lines of this type of puffy elements. So let's see what we can do there. So I will create a top stitch with 0 offset. It will be placed on the internal line, and then I will put thread thickness 80, and I will add it to these internal lines for the top. This is what I meant when you use the free sewing tool. Sometimes it sticks to the wrong line somehow. And you can now see that the top stitch is kind of breaking, and that's very common when you place a top stitch on internal line. And what we can do is we can increase the offset a little bit, maybe 0.2 or 0.3, something like this. And usually you can fix it by that. Then another thing that can help you fix it is to flipping it on the other side. So now the top stitch is a little bit more on this side where the wrinkles are creating. So you can flip it and then it can become cleaner. Not always it works, but yeah, this is something you can try to clean up a look a little bit. Also here, let's check if flipping can help. And now let's add some fabric. As you saw in the render, I have some nice fabric that I created with the fabric creator tool. And this is pretty nice because you can just create random fabrics very quickly, and CLO also has like some default textures that you can get. So here I changed to the rip stop, can't see it, this one. And then I do cotton polyester so it's not so stiff. I just randomly picked 50-50. But here it's fun, you can pick some like clothing that you have in your wardrobe, and then you can try to make fabrics based on the fabrics that are used in your shirts or something, and you can see how accurate it looks. And then here under maps, you can see like 3 options. And then I pick this one, apply and close, and then here you go. It's quite nice. It has all the maps and everything. And then once I simulate, of course, the physical properties are different. So depending on the fabric, the expression of the puffiness will be different. So here I think I need some stronger, either some stronger pressure value, or I need to create more, allow more space and add additional shrinkage. That gives a little bit more puffiness. Or I can also copy this fabric, this base fabric, and add it only on the top layer of the pocket and the flap, and then adjust the stretch value. So let's see what happens when I do. So first I will put these two on 30 because they were quite high. You see there's not much difference because between 30 and 50 I don't think there's much difference. But once you start going lower, you will definitely notice some difference of the puffiness. You see the fabric is kind of letting the pressure to stretch it out a little bit. Now, so here step by step, you can try to see which is good. I would say this is already too much. I don't think it looks very natural, but it really depends on the expectation that you have and what kind of volume you would like to visualize. And of course, this is particle distance 5, so it is quite low, but it's not that low. And if you want a more detail, if you want a more realistic look, I definitely recommend putting it on much lower value if your computer can handle it. And then you will really see all these nice fine wrinkle. And yeah, I think the expression of the puffiness becomes even more natural. You can even see this fine wrinkle here, which sometimes is very difficult to achieve, because even though there's a lot of fabric that is not a lot, but there's some fabric that is gathered, it's just the mesh size is too big, so it can't actually create these very fine wrinkles that you would usually see here. Okay, so that's it for the video. I think we were able to achieve a nice looking puffy pocket. I hope some of the tips that I showed you here are useful in your work. Thank you for watching and have a good day. Bye.